Hello, everyone. I am Chris Hyams, the CEO of Indeed, and welcome to the next installment of Here to Help. This is our look at how Indeed has been navigating the global impact of COVID-19. Today is February 11th. We are on day 345 of global work from home. At Indeed, our mission is to help people get jobs, and this is what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's what keeps us up at night. And every day, in that work, we see the power that one job can have on a person, on their family, and on their community. And this month, while we're celebrating Black History Month, we are very proud today to announce Rising Voices, which is a new initiative in partnership with Lena Waithe and Hillman Grad Productions. Lena is one of the most powerful voices in the film industry, and Hillman Grad is committed to creating opportunity for underrepresented filmmakers. And Rising Voices will invest in and empower the next generation of Black, Indigenous, and people of color filmmakers, and will bring new voices to this story of the meaning of work. So today I am delighted to be joined by Rishi Rajani, who is the president of Hillman Grad Productions, which he co-founded with Lena Waithe. Rishi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. That day 345 hit me hard. I didn't know that was the that was exactly where we were at.
Yeah, it's sobering. We're coming up on lapping this one here, and we'll have some opportunity to talk about this last year and what it's meant. But we always start these conversations with just a check-in. So tell us, how are you doing today?
Yeah. I think I would say that today I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about things. And also one of the things that I think I've been, feeling a lot during the pandemic as we navigate the difficulties of shooting film and TV shows during COVID and, feeling like, disconnected from colleagues because we're out of the office and not feeling like we're able to do all the things I wanted to do. I have also, I think, been feeling a certain sense of gratitude because I'm in a place where I get to keep making content I really believe in. It feels like there's a real energy and drive for the sorts of material that Lena and I are really pushing. And the fact that has only ramped up, I think, over the last year, 345 days, is really great. And also knowing that this pandemic's been really tough on a lot of people, and so to be sort of in the privileged position of getting to make art and getting to support storytellers is, I do feel very grateful for it. And and Fauci this morning said that most of the country could get vaccinated by the end of April, which is incredibly exciting because it feels like we're the light at the end of the tunnel. So I guess those are the things I'm feeling today.
Fantastic. Well, I want to just give a little background to folks about what it is that we're launching today. And, I'll just super briefly from the Indeed side. For us, I mentioned up front that we see through our mission and through our work of helping people get jobs, the power that a job can have in a person's life and how much change it can bring to that person and to their family and to their community. We also see very clearly that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And there are huge bias and barriers in the hiring process. And the film industry is not only no different, in some cases, it's even harder, where so much of being able to be successful there requires knowing someone and getting a hand up. So we wanted to do something where we could bring new voices, underrepresented voices, to telling the story of the meaning of work. And when we first met up with you to sort of pitch this idea, you had a fully formed idea already of something you and Lena have been wanting to do. So why don't you just tell a little bit of the story of what Rising Voices is and what it means to you and Hillman Grad?
Totally. Well, as you can imagine, our inbox and specifically Lena's DMs get flooded with people asking, how do I become a director? Like, I want to direct, this is what I want to do. And Lena's amazing in that she probably answers, more of those DMs than she needs to or should. But, it's just incredibly difficult to break in as a director in the film and television space. And I say even more than writing or acting in some ways, because you need to have something to show. You need to have a sample of your work. You need to have something that you've directed for anyone to take you seriously. And so it's honestly been like kind of a struggle for Lena and I, because to be able to make something worthwhile, you also need access to resources and money, and even like sort of like the technical know-how of what production looks like and who you need to hire. And then even when you have the money and you have sort of like the access to just like the bare minimum resources, there's still, I think, without guidance and mentorship, you might end up hiring the wrong person, or paying too much for a permit, or really kind of not being able to get the most out of your final product. And so one of the things that Lena and I have been really excited to do, and this is why I think it was so like serendipitous and amazing that you came to us with this opportunity, is that we really desperately wanted to start some version of a directorial mentorship program where we actually get to take people who who have a range of experiences. Some people who maybe have directed a short before, some people who maybe just like really it's been a one-person camera team as they take footage of their own life, and give them the opportunity in the space to actually create something that could get them recognized in the Hollywood space and actually get them into the system as someone worth potentially giving more to, and giving an episode of television to, or giving their first feature film to. And Lena and I have we love short films because we've hired so many people off of short films. We on Boomerang season 1, 5 of our directors out of the 6 were all coming off of short films. We're all given their first episode of TV to direct. We're making a feature film with this incredibly talented young woman, A.V. Rockwell, over the summer, and the reason that we're doing that is because we saw her short film Feathers, which was stunning and beautiful, and I think actually played at Tribeca and Sundance and a few other places, which attracted our attention. So short film is a really good, I think, calling card for a young director in the business to be taken seriously. And for the most part, the unfortunate aspect of it is, I think, the people that have the money, access, resources to make short films are generally in fairly privileged positions and have access points to the business. And so they're not really the people that need, a place like Hillman Grad and a place like Indeed to support them. So what this program is it's actually creating that access point. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to do an open call to filmmakers all over the United States, give them the opportunity to submit a 10-page script of a short film that they are dying to shoot. And we're going to read all those, and we're going to, through kind of looking at sort of the originality of the piece, like the resonant themes of it, the specificity of the work, the quality of any kind of directing sample they're able to share. And we're going to select 10 of those filmmakers, and we're going to give them the chance to make a movie, which is huge. And so, and not only are it's not like we're, giving them the cash and saying, come back with a product. We're actually going to be mentoring them through the process. Because that's also incredibly important to us, because I think a lot of sort of the programs, and I guess Lena and I's critique of diversity programs in Hollywood is a lot of the times they just, give someone a stipend for a year, give someone mentorship for a year, and don't really provide a platform, a launching pad for them. And so what I think we're going to be doing with this program is, one, be guiding filmmakers along the way and helping them avoid the pitfalls of making your first project. And then, also giving them an opportunity to either go on and become, one of the filmmaker in residences for Indeed, and introduce them to sort of, talent managers and agents. And, a dream scenario would be to hire some of these directors in some of our shows, or to do a first feature with one of them, to make sure that they're actually getting into the business in a very real way. And so, I mean, the fact that, Indeed and Chris, that you've been so sort of like, generous in both like the scope of the access and the resources, and $100,000 per movie is not a bad short film budget in any way, shape, or form. I think it's exciting because I think in the combination of sort of the reach that you have and the you know the resources that you're giving, plus kind of I think our approach to mentorship and the work that we've been doing in the creative space, I think it creates an incredibly great partnership for us to be able to actually launch careers in a very real and tangible way.
I think that this is something that we found pretty early on, that we shared a lot in terms of our mission and our vision and what we're trying to do. And where we're coming at it is that we actually want to produce some great work to help tell the story of the meaning of work, and that our experience is that the best ideas are not our own. And so creating an opportunity for a number of different people. And so just the mechanics of the program for anyone that's listening here and might be interested. So as Rishi said, we're going to have an open call for people to submit a short screenplay. We're going to select 10 people, and we're putting $1 million, so $100,000 budget to each of the 10 filmmakers to produce this short film. And for clarity, we've talked about this. We're not doing this because we think that this is, a good thing to do. We're doing it because we think it's actually going to produce great work, and it's going to be better at telling this story of what work means than we could easily spend $1 million on a TV ad and get a lot less out of it than 10 rich and distinct and I would imagine pretty personal stories coming from a diverse set of ideas and new voices. But the other thing that we really love is that, how the idea shaped after we started working with you of not just doing a lot of little things, but really the amount of time and effort that's going to go into producing these 10 films and the mentorship and production support that you're offering. We're creating jobs, which obviously we like, not just for 10 people, but for an entire crew, for people behind the camera, in front of the camera, and creating experience that will be sustainable. So it's also not just a one shot, here's a check, go do something, but that we really hope. And so I guess I'd love to hear just a little bit from you. What do you think success would look like from you? How would you and Lena look back on this and say, this really achieved everything that we set out to try to do here?
Totally. And I'd also say, I super appreciate you being game when we're like, more money, less filmmakers, like let's get really into the nitty gritty of this, and being game to work with us on that, because I think that's also like, it is really important to sort of, for us to make sure that we're giving a lot of people the opportunity, but also doing it incredibly intentionally and knowing that we can actually, have success in it. I think success for us is, obviously creating 10 distinct, beautiful pieces of art, but I think it also extends beyond that when we look at the filmmakers that come out of the program in their careers after coming out of the program, and which of those filmmakers get signed, which of those filmmakers is able to get an episode of TV to direct, which of those filmmakers is able to make their first feature, which of those filmmakers are able to just break into the system in a very real way. And I think obviously that's going to be partially based on the quality of the films and partially based on the tenacity of the filmmakers. But if we can really come into this program having felt like we delivered an opportunity for these filmmakers to break into the business in a very real way, I mean, that's sort of, I think, the most incredible form of success. And I think for all of us, the goal is going to be to continue guiding them in that process and making sure that we can do everything on our end to the films come out looking stunning.
So the focus in terms of the talent that we're looking for, there's lots of underrepresented talent, and you went through a number of examples. We're targeting specifically BiPOC filmmakers, and one of the things that we think is interesting, I'd love to hear your thoughts, is what do you think is unique about the BiPOC perspective when it comes to the meaning of work?
Oh man, and I feel like BiPOC also encompasses so many different perspectives and types of people, but I think there has been a tendency in this country, even as things seemingly start to get more equal, there's still not a level of equality when it comes to access to work and access to jobs. and access to opportunity. And I think like we talk a lot about sort of leveling the playing field and providing perspective, but I think a lot of times there's like also like a lack of just general access. Like I didn't know what the film business was coming up. I didn't know anyone in it. I didn't have any touch points there. I didn't have an uncle that worked at CAA. And I think for a lot of the BiPOC community, you're having this generation of people who are interested in getting into a variety of different fields that just truly don't have the ability to do so in the same way that maybe white counterparts would. And so I think for us, when we think about the power of work, there's also, I think, a little bit of this tendency, and I think I've definitely felt it personally in Hollywood too, where a lot of times in the past there was one seat at the table for a person of color. And it almost created this incredibly like competitive dynamic where you're almost competing against other people of color for that one slot at the table. And I think in coming into 2020, 2021, as people start to think a lot more about systemic racism and the systems that have been really kind of holding people back, there's got to be a sense of big companies and organizations and systems understanding all of their inherent biases and racism that have created workplaces that are maybe not as diverse as they could be or inclusive as they could be. And so I'm really excited about these filmmakers being able to come in and tell very personal stories and relationships with work and what it's meant to them and getting jobs. And I think that it's going to be kind of eye-opening for a lot of people too, in when you actually contextualize that versus what we think is typical, or or what people think is racist or not racist, or even sort of like, I think like coming into a world where we've actually started to have real conversations about our criminal justice system and conversations about public education and systems of what happens to communities of color versus communities not of color. Like there's a lot of work to be done. And I think what's great about art is there's a way to explore really resonant themes and poignant moments that are but do it in a way that can feel entertaining or artful or elegant, that doesn't feel so in your face. And there's also a level of sort of like actually being able to present your own perspective and opinion and point of view, that people can actually watch some of these. I love the idea of people being able to watch some of these short films and coming away actually thinking a little bit differently about the world, or at least feeling like they got a perspective they don't normally get on an everyday basis. And I think that's just the power of art overall. I think for me, in so many ways, it was an introduction to a world that I didn't know, and that's what books were, and that's what movies were, and that's what kind of helped shape who I am as a person. I think we can keep pushing that envelope as well in a very, very real way, and I love these short films doing that as well. And I think as we go through the development process, we're going to push the filmmakers to really be nuanced and hypercritical and not do anything that feels ordinary.
Tell us a little bit about your journey into the entertainment industry and how you started working with Lena Waithe.
Totally. So I guess to take it right back from the beginning, I was born in London, England. My parents were actually both born in Africa, and my family sort of generationally is of the demographic of South Asians, of Indians that went India to East Africa, to the UK, and eventually to the US. So have family all over the world. But, I never really knew that I wanted to get into the film and TV space. I wasn't one of those people that was like, movie obsessed growing up and being like, I always knew I wanted to be a producer. I think it was something that I sort of fell into because of a love of storytelling. In a way, like I was definitely the kid that, it skipped recess and hung out in the library and read books, and that was sort of like my own version of escapism. But, I ended up going to NYU for school, but I was actually hell-bent to becoming an investment banker because for some reason I had this 30-year plan when I was 18 years old that I'm going to go to Wall Street, I'm going to go make a crazy amount of money, and then I'm going to be able to finance art and art of all kinds, which is a really ridiculous thing for an 18-year-old kid to say who didn't know anything about the finance system or how much I would dislike the investment banking world. And so very quickly realized that that was not actually what I wanted to do, and was sort of trying to figure out my next path. And I think like there was part of me that was like, oh, do I go into the publishing industry? Do I go into the film industry? I think people told me there was a lot more opportunity to tell more stories in a not dying industry. So I think the film industry is sort of the thing that I sort of get fixated on. And I think I also think my world opened up a little bit when I moved to New York and felt like I was exposed to a lot more different kinds of people, a lot more perspectives, and it was like a sort of really exciting time in my life in terms of being able to explore what I wanted to do. So, I ended up working a bunch of weird, odd jobs in New York to try and break into the film industry. I was a receptionist / intern for Morgan Spurlock's company. This is after Super Size Me. I answered a Craigslist ad to go work for an off-Broadway show and help them sell the film rights to the show, which I don't know is a job that you hire a 19-year-old kid to do, but was able to sort of get in there and sat backstage calling agents and managers trying to pitch them on this off-Broadway show. Spoiler alert, I did not succeed in that endeavor. But it was also like a really good sort of like moment for me to realize, oh, like this is the sort of system. There are agents, there are managers. You need to be somewhat legitimate to get a call back from any of these people. And so, continuing my foray into strange and eccentric things, I picked up a real estate license and started to sling apartments on the weekend to, continue to make money as I was venturing down the Hollywood path. But eventually all of these sort of, odds and ends jobs resulted in me getting an internship with 20th Century Fox, which was really, really important as it was, I think, my first, I'd say like, foray into the studio space and gaining a little bit of quote unquote legitimacy as I was making my way into the Hollywood ecosystem. And that particular arena at 20th Century Fox was book to film adaptation. And so I worked with them when they optioned the rights, and generally when they're optioning rights, it's pre-publication. But for Gone Girl, for The Martian, I got to see a lot of those films, and getting to see kind of the really cool bidding wars and how studios get excited about things and understanding how the system of producers works. And to me, I was like, oh wow, this is what I want to do, and also be able to find a space that was so specifically with my love of reading and narrative and books, and to be able to have that connective tissue to the film business was really, really cool. And so, specifically that division was a book scouting division, which meant that they weren't actually involved in the production of the films and TV shows. And so I was sort of like a bit naive about how that all worked. And I was like, great, now when do we get to go make it? And they're like, oh, we don't go make it, the producers go make it. And I was like, well, I want to go do that job. I want to go make the movies. And so they were incredible. There was a guy named Drew Reed and Chris Goldberg and Sandra Bauman that ran that department. And they were like, if you want to be a producer, you got to go to LA. And so that was my next step. And they were incredible in that, that first job for me was, I kind of feel like in so many ways, I owe everything that I have in the business now to those group of people believing me. And they set me up with interviews at all the big talent agencies in Hollywood. They set me up with journal meetings with a lot of executives that I still work with to this day. And so it was really cool. And that was like, I was when I came out to LA and it was pre-Uber and Lyft. And so I rode the bus around to these interviews, and I was in a suit and everyone made fun of me because no one, I guess, wears suits in Hollywood. But got my first job in the mailroom at UTA, and mailroom is a crazy place to start. I wasn't in there for an extraordinarily long period of time, but it was my grad school, in a way, for the film business. I ended up working for a woman named Dana Spector, and I became her assistant, and it was great because, again, it was that connective tissue. She was a book to film and book to TV agent. And so I was able to go in and leverage everything I had learned from Fox to be able to get on her desk pretty quickly. And, did all manner of assistant things and rolling calls and scheduling, and ending up in the extremely unfortunate position of thinking I lost my boss's cat. But, made it through, and there was a moment there where I was like, well, do I be a book agent? I love working with authors. I love helping them, get their work out and produced and adapted. And there's still something about producing for me that I really wanted to aspire towards. And so I left. I moved with her to a company called Paradigm. I left Paradigm and went to a new company called Studio 8 that was started by Jeff Robinov, who's the former chairman of Warner Brothers. I was with them for 4 years and really was able to cut my teeth as an executive. It was where I got the bump up to go work on the feature side for a while. And then right at the end of my time there's a woman named Catherine Pope who was head of the television division. And she had really, I think, seen something in me, seen something in my taste. And when she left to go start Charter Cable's television division, she told Jeff that I should take over the TV projects she was leaving behind, which was incredible, but also throwing me into a world I had no idea about. I was like, oh my God, what's a showrunner? How do you staff up a room? Like, how do you pitch, TV ideas? And what I realized is that I think for the stories that I was pursuing, that may have felt a little more niche for big budget Hollywood blockbusters, TV was a really exciting place. I mean, the first project that I sold was a story about a gay luchador on the border of Mexico and the U.S., filled with magical realism and incredibly compelling characters, and which would have never really flown as a film at Studio 8 at the time. And so as I was sort of progressing, I think I was really also developing my taste and my sense of place in it. I think Hollywood can be a world where you can sometimes get caught up in the bullshit and, feel, especially as sort of like a young brown kid coming in, that there was a desire to like sort of integrate into this, older white guy corporate culture. And I think there are times where I got really frustrated with sorts of artists that I wanted to advocate for sort of movies that I thought were important, because I guess a lot of people that were at the top of the studios at the time didn't think they were as important as I did. And so, I met Lena when we actually, I had optioned, and was part of optioning a graphic novel at Studio 8 that was called Black. It was basically set in a world which only Black people have superpowers, which was a really, really cool project at the time. And Lena had just won her Emmy, and we'd sent it to her for consideration, and she loved it. And she came on board and developed out a take, and that ultimately didn't end up moving forward, but it was a really good sort of first connection point. I was like, at the time because I had seen her, and obviously in Master of None, read her work for a long time, was very like, oh my God, this woman is incredible. I did not anticipate at that moment that we would become producing partners. But, as I was sort of figuring out my next step in the business and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to accomplish, I was sort of shying away, I think, from going back into the studio system. And there was, really the opportunity to interview for the position at Hillman Grad came across my desk a few months later. And Lena's manager at the time, Andrew Coles, called me and said, Lena's trying to start a production company. You're interested in joining her? And I was like, of course. Like, where do I sign up? And so Lena and I went and had breakfast and, at La Mill Coffee in Silver Lake. And I don't think I've ever prepped for an interview quite so hard. I came in with, I actually had pulled out like a manila folder and was like putting pieces of paper all across this table. And I was like, here are the artists that I think you should be working with. Here are the pieces of intellectual property that are worth picking up. Here would be my plan for year one, and I think she probably thought I was a crazy person. But I think liked the ambition and liked the spirit and liked the hustle. And Lena is a very decisive person. And so literally by that night, she was like, you're it. You're the person. And it was really cool because I think in that first conversation, we really landed on this theme and mantra of protest art. And it was something that she and I both connected with and resonated with deeply, which is that if we have a platform and an opportunity to put content out in the world, then, we need to have the responsibility of putting out content that we really believe in and content that pushes the culture forward in some way, shape, or form. And, and it doesn't mean for us that we're trying to make, in your face, on the nose medicine, after school specials. It's more, I think for us, that we can make content that's incredibly entertaining, that also, happens to present a point of view or a perspective or a character that doesn't normally get the time on screen. And that's become a sort of fundamental philosophy for us all across Hillman Grad. And one of the other things that Lena said that I loved so much during that meeting was, she said, one, I always knew I was going to win an Emmy, which is amazing because it's so Lena and so great. But two, she said, I didn't necessarily think I was going to win an Emmy this early in my career. And so you want to be earning that award every single day by bringing other people up with me. So I think for us, it's not just the content that we're putting onto the screen. It's also who's in front of the camera, who's behind the camera, who's in the writer's room. Because that also, at the time, and even now, it's still a fight to make that in any way, shape, or form inclusive. And for us, it's not just racial diversity. It's not just sexual diversity. It's geographic diversity. It's financial diversity. It's diversity of disabilities. It's age diversity. It's really anyone who hasn't been given a space. Like, that's what Hillman Grad is, and we want to create and develop that space. And so, I've been with Lena now for a little over 2.5 years, which also feels like way longer than it is. And we've been able to make a lot of really incredible stuff. But what I most appreciate about it is, you look at Boomerang or 20s or Queen and Slim or the 40-year-old version or even The Shy, which is going into its 4th season and which just started shooting again this week. It's that consistency of perspective, that consistency of protest art, being able to have brown characters where it's not all about them being brown, queer characters where they're not struggling with their sexuality, and instead of hopes and dreams of making it as artists and filmmakers and have crushes and love lives and ambitions. Like, that's what we want to do, and that's what we resonate with. And I think when we look for material, it's always like, is this a perspective and point of view that we haven't seen before, but it's also one that we're going to feel really proud of putting on the screen? Is it one that we feel that we can spend the next 3 to 5 years of our life fighting for every single day? And those are really the tenets of what we do. We have a similar philosophy about that. And so we're just super excited about this as kind of the next step in really creating access points for artists.
Well, as our time is coming to a close, I'd love to sort of wrap up looking a little bit to the future. And really, when we look at these last 345 days, and the industry that you're in has been deeply affected, like so many others. What do you see as some of the changes that will be not just temporary adaptations to being in the middle of a pandemic, but what we've been through mean for the future of entertainment for Hillman Grad, and how has your perspective changed permanently?
Totally. Well, there's no movie theaters anymore, and it's all streaming, which is, in itself like a sort of just from a like macro perspective. I don't know that the movie theater experience is ever going to go away, but it's been really crazy to see how quickly the industry has shifted to a model that's not reliant on what I think is like one of the most iconic American institutions, which is movies in the movie theater. But I think there's also been an awareness raised through the Black Lives Matter movement, through a lot of the protests that happened last year, even talking about, whether it's like sort of abolishment of the police or whether it's, really sort of, moving away from like the current prison system. I think a lot of people, including myself in a lot of ways, like felt like going into 2020, I was like a woke individual and I knew things and I read the New York Times and all that good stuff. But feeling like as a lot of this stuff came to the forefront and some of the ugliness in the country, I think came to the forefront, realizing that a lot of our systems really need to be reconstructed. And that exists, I think, on a governmental level, but I think it also exists in Hollywood. And I think Hollywood has taken a very critical look at the amount of executives who are in green light positions that are women and people of color, and it's not that many. It's like the vast majority of the heads of all the television networks and TV studios are still older white men, and that what it leads to, I think, is one very specific perspective. And I think there's been a shift in sort of people realizing that they need to diversify the decision makers in Hollywood. But two, I think that there is a realization that the sort of age-old opinion that content for people that have traditionally been othered doesn't make money has gone out the window. I think whether you look at Black Panther, whether you look at Crazy Rich Asians, it's I think there's sort of been a proving that this is no longer the case, and that, movies of people of color can't work internationally. It was always a big one I heard coming up in the business. And I think we've proven that that's not the case either. And in fact, there happen to be a lot of people of color that live internationally. And that, and so I think that you're starting to see some of these shifts in Hollywood, from a sort of like, this is what a blockbuster is, this is who can star in a movie, this is what is valuable. People realizing that that's not actually the case as much. And maybe it was never the case. Maybe it was just a system that was kind of put in place to continue to keep people down. But at least now we know that there's a level of profitability. There's a desire for content that feels different than everything we've seen before. And to be able to get to that place, we need some of the decision makers to look a little bit more inclusive and to just, have more voices in there that reflect these different perspectives. And so despite, I think, us trying to figure out the system of movie theaters and how we get back into that, I am really excited for Hollywood to continue to make this push and to grow into more socially aware content, and realizing that content can also be incredibly entertaining and really fun to watch. So it's got its good and its bad.
Fantastic. Well, I could keep talking for a very long time with you, but we are out of time. I know you need to catch a plane. Rishi, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today, but thank you so much for this opportunity to partner together. I can't tell you how excited we are to bring this program to life. For folks who will be watching this when this is going out, the program will be actually officially launched, so you can go to the Hillman Grad website and read about the program, and submissions are open through the end of February. So please come and share your story with us, and we're so excited to see what comes of this.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. We're incredibly excited, and can't wait to start reading these scripts.